You think avoiding confrontation earns you respect. It doesn't. It earns you silence. It earns you dismissal. It earns you a place on the wall with the other well-behaved portraits no one remembers. Because conflict, when used wisely, is not chaos, it's calibration. It's the moment when everyone around you realizes, wait, this person won't tolerate disrespect. This person has a threshold, and we just hit it. Now, don't confuse this with rage. Losing control is weakness, but controlled confrontation, that's pure power. When someone cuts you off mid-sentence, correct them. When someone mocks you under the breath, call it out. When someone gives orders they're not entitled to, push back. And not with anger, with stillness, with tone. Say, let's get one thing straight. That doesn't work with me. Watch your words, then go silent. Let the tension speak louder than your voice ever could. This is how you fracture the illusion of hierarchy. You're not attacking. You're revealing. Revealing that the peace everyone enjoyed was built on your silence. Here's the paradox, real. Harmony doesn't come from avoiding conflict. It comes from showing others you're willing to go to war if needed, and then choosing not to. Because only when people know what you're capable of, can they appreciate your restraint. Break this rule when the group starts to treat you like background noise. When people speak over you, undermine you, laugh at your expense. What if everything they taught you about being a good person was designed to keep you powerless? You were trained to smile when you're angry, to say sorry when you've done nothing wrong, to nod while someone disrespects you, all in the name of being polite. But what if I told you that politeness is a leash, not a virtue? That humility, silence, and kindness, when misused, become the exact chains that keep you invisible. In a world where those who speak first are heard, and those who move first dominate, being nice is often just a script handed to you by those who don't want you to rise. This video is not about rebellion for the sake of chaos. It's about strategy, precision, learning when to break the rules they fed you, so you can finally command the space you walk in, without apologizing for existing. If you're ready to stop asking for permission and start reclaiming your power, then keep watching. These are the 10 social rules you must break if you ever want to lead. Rule 1. Don't interrupt. A rule meant to silence you. They told you since childhood. Wait your turn. Don't interrupt. Let others finish. It sounds polite. It sounds civilized. But let's be honest, that's how you train a pet, not a leader. What they never explained is this: silence isn't always golden. Sometimes it's submission. In the social arena, every word spoken by someone else without resistance becomes a flag they plant in your territory. The longer you stay quiet, the more power they absorb. And by the time they finish their well-rehearsed speech, they've already rewritten the hierarchy, and you've silently agreed to your own insignificance. Now ask yourself, do predators wait their turn to speak? Do mafia bosses raise their hand for permission to disagree? Do leaders wait to be called on like obedient school children? Of course not. They interrupt, but not out of nervousness, not out of ego. They interrupt with timing, with weight, with intention, because they know when someone else is speaking to dominate, to persuade, to steer the room, silence is not virtue. It's a vacuum. So how do you break this rule without looking like a fool? You do it like a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. Don't blurt, don't babble, don't cut off like a child desperate for attention. Instead, interrupt with calm authority. Wait until their voice starts climbing, until the room begins to nod, until their influence begins to take root. Then, cut clean through. Save your genuine kindness for the few who earn it. The people who don't use flattery as a weapon. The ones who don't talk down to you with charm dripping from their teeth. To everyone else, you owe them nothing. And here's the twist they never taught you. People respect those who make them uncomfortable more than those who make them laugh. They remember the ones who don't bend, the ones who don't flinch, the ones who smile by choice, not by reflex. Because in a room full of eager approval seekers, the one who doesn't play the game becomes the game. So, next time you're tempted to be nice for the sake of peace, ask yourself, are you being kind, or are you just afraid of being disliked? There's a difference, and once you find it, you become untouchable. Rule 3. Don't brag, The silence that makes you invisible. Let your work speak for itself. Stay humble, people will notice. They told you this like it was wisdom. But in the real world, that advice is how you disappear. Here's the truth they didn't mention. The world doesn't reward silence. It forgets it. If you don't speak your name into the room, someone else will fill the silence with theirs. If you don't tell your story, someone else will decide how you're remembered. And if you sit there quietly hoping someone notices your worth, congratulations. You've chosen invisibility as your personal brand. Now, this isn't a license to become an obnoxious egomaniac. No, the power lies in subtle dominance, strategic arrogance. Not the loud, clumsy kind that begs for applause, but the kind that drips from your presence like quiet thunder. You don't brag, you anchor. When someone tries to dismiss you with fake politeness, drop a name. When you walk into a room where no one knows your value, let it leak out through carefully placed words. Not, I'm amazing at this, but when I led a team of 12 through a turnaround project last year, during the deal, we closed with that major firm. Say it like fact, not opinion. No embellishment, no explanations, just raw presence. Because here's the secret. It's not bragging when you've earned it. It's not arrogance when it's backed by evidence. And in a room full of talkers, the person with quiet, well-timed facts becomes the center of gravity. You break this rule when the moment demands dominance, when someone's twisting the story, when you're being underestimated, when you're surrounded by inflated egos trying to shout their way to the top. If you stay silent, then you're not being humble, you're surrendering the narrative. And the narrative is everything, so speak, not often, but when it counts. And when you do, never explain, never justify. Let your words land like a stone dropped in still water, clean, heavy, impossible to ignore. Here's the paradox, speak less, but say more. Let each word reposition the room. Soon, people will start referencing you, quoting you, framing their opinions around yours, not because you shouted, but because when you spoke, the air changed. And that's the goal, to be the kind of presence that forces everyone else to recalibrate, not with noise, but with weight. Because the ones who know their value don't wait for others to say it. They carry it in every word and drop it exactly when it matters most. Rule 4, don't stare, because your eyes might reveal you're not afraid. Don't stare. It's aggressive. Look away. It's polite. Keep eye contact short. It's respectful. You were taught these things like gospel. But let's decode what that teaching really meant. It meant lower your gaze, so no one feels challenged. It meant shrink your presence before you even speak. From childhood, you were conditioned to look down, to glance quickly and return to safety, to avoid holding eye contact in case someone might feel intimidated. But here's what they never said. Your gaze is a weapon, and like all weapons, the powerful want it regulated. Eye contact is primal. It existed long before language. Among predators, it's how you mark territory. Among leaders, it's how you scan the room, and the room learns to behave. And among the weak, it's how they beg for approval with darting glances and nervous laughter. If you want to break this rule, and you must, then do it with purpose. You don't look at everyone. You don't stare to provoke. You hold your gaze like a slow-burning spotlight, and you aim it where it matters. When someone tries to dominate the conversation, look at them. When someone lies with confidence, look at them. When someone mocks you with a passive-aggressive joke, look, and don't flinch. No reaction, no smile, no blinking. Your eyes become the silence they weren't prepared for. And in that silence, they feel the power shift without you saying a word. Here's the twist. You don't stare to intimidate. You stare to establish reality. A predator doesn't need to growl. A leader doesn't need to yell. Sometimes they just look and the air changes. Do it right. And here's what happens. People fumble their words. They lower their voices. They start looking for your approval even though they won't admit it. Because they just stepped into your frame and now they're performing in it. And when you finally speak after that pause, after that gaze, your words don't just land, they echo. So next time someone says, "Don't stare, it's rude," translate it correctly. Don't let them feel you. Don't let them sense your power. And you can politely ignore that advice, because you've seen what happens when you look away. They keep talking, they keep lying, they keep rising. But when you look, really look, they sit down, even if they're still standing. That's not rudeness, that's presence. And in a world drowning in artificial smiles and darting glances, your stillness, your gaze, becomes the only truth anyone remembers. Rule 5, don't correct people in public. A rule that lets lies when you shouldn't embarrass people. If someone's wrong, correct them privately. Be kind. Be mature. Sounds noble, doesn't it? But let me ask you, what happens when someone speaks a lie about you in front of others? What happens when someone distorts facts, misleads the group, or flexes their status with falsehoods, and you stay quiet just to keep the peace? I'll tell you, they win, and you vanish. Because in the court of perception, silence is agreement, and every unchecked lie becomes a brick in someone else's throne while you watch from below. This rule was never meant to protect dignity. It was meant to protect egos, especially the ones playing dirty. So let's break it, but break it with surgical precision. Don't explode. Don't rant. Don't act wounded. Interrupt like a scalpel, not a hammer. When someone twists reality, stop them calmly, coldly, completely, not out of pride, out of duty. Say, "That's incorrect. Actually, the facts are different. Let's clarify that before it gets misunderstood." Then say nothing more. Let the weight of correction do the talking. Because if you over-explain, you dilute the power. If you show emotion, they'll accuse you of ego. But if you speak with stillness, like a judge delivering sentence, the room freezes. And in that pause, you rise. Here's what no one tells you. The one who corrects with composure becomes the authority, not the aggressor, the standard. You don't need to humiliate, you just need to restore order. Because in every group, there's always someone trying to rewrite the truth to impress, to manipulate, to dominate. And if no one challenges them, the group adapts. Truth bends. Respect follows the loudest voice until you speak, and suddenly the spell breaks. This isn't about being petty. This isn't about proving yourself. It's about defending the hierarchy of truth. Because if they build theirs on fiction and you say nothing, you become a servant to their story. So, break the rule when it matters most, when they twist what you said, when they posture with misinformation, when they fake expertise and you're the one who knows better. Don't be aggressive, be undeniable. Speak, correct, pause, and move on. Because the silence after correction is what makes it echo. People won't remember your words. They'll remember the chill. They'll remember the moment someone tried to rewrite reality and you broke their pen in half. That is not arrogance. That is presence. And in a room full of performers, the one who dares to reset the stage becomes the director everyone listens to. Rule 6, avoid conflict. The peace that silences you. They told you to keep the peace, to be the bigger person, to avoid arguments, walk away, stay calm. But here's what they didn't tell you. If you avoid conflict at all costs, you'll pay the price with your dignity. Because sometimes, what they call maturity is just submission wearing a mask. Let's be real. The world doesn't respect those who keep their heads down. It respects those who draw the line and defend it. You think avoiding confrontation earns you respect? It doesn't. It earns you silence. It earns you dismissal. It earns you a place on the wall with the other well-behaved portraits no one remembers. Because conflict, when used wisely, is not chaos, it's calibration. It's the moment when everyone around you realizes, wait, this person won't tolerate disrespect. This person has a threshold, and we just hit it. Now, don't confuse this with rage. Losing control is weakness, but controlled confrontation, that's pure power. When someone cuts you off mid-sentence, correct them. When someone mocks you under the breath, call it out. When someone gives orders they're not entitled to, push back. And not with anger, with stillness, with tone. Say, let's get one thing straight. That doesn't work with me. Watch your words, then go silent. Let the tension speak louder than your voice ever could. This is how you fracture the illusion of hierarchy. You're not attacking, you're revealing that the peace everyone enjoyed was built on your silence. Here's the paradox: real harmony doesn't come from avoiding conflict. It comes from showing others you're willing to go to war if needed, and then choosing not to. Because only when people know what you're capable of can they appreciate your restraint. Break this rule when the group starts to treat you like background noise. When people speak over you, undermine you, laugh at your expense. If you don't confront it, then they'll assume you're okay with it. And once that assumption hardens, you'll never reclaim the ground you lost. Don't raise your voice, raise your presence. Don't shout over the crowd. Just be the silence that makes the whole room pause. Because when you learn to confront with cold clarity, not emotion, you become unpredictable, unshakable, unignorable. And the next time someone even thinks about crossing the line, they'll remember the last time you withdrew it in real time, and they'll stay on their side. Because peace is not the absence of conflict, it's the consequence of power that doesn't need to be proven. Rule 7. Be transparent. The myth that makes you predictable: they told you to be honest, to open up, to share what you feel, what you think, what you plan. They made it sound noble. Transparent people, they said, are trustworthy, they are authentic. But here's what they didn't tell you: transparency isn't trust, it's vulnerability. Gift-trapped for anyone to use against you. Because the moment you show your entire hand, they start playing your cards. Tell them what you want. They'll control how close you get. Tell them what you fear. They'll know exactly where to aim. Tell them who hurt you. They'll wear that mask when it's useful. The world doesn't reward transparency, it exploits it. Here's the truth: mystery is power. Uncertainty is leverage. Ambiguity is armor. You don't need to lie, but you do need to select. Select what to reveal. Select what to withhold. Select how much of your soul gets seen, and by who. Break this rule when someone gets too curious to fast, when their questions come coated in smiles, when getting to know you starts to feel like getting ready to manage you. Don't give them the blueprint to your mind. Instead, give them fragments. Give them pauses. Let silence fill in the gaps and watch their imagination do the rest. Use phrases like, "I prefer to keep that part to myself. That's a story for another time." Or simply, smile and say nothing. Because here's the twist: people don't fear what they understand. They fear what they can't quite decode. And in that uncertainty, you grow taller. They begin to wonder, who are you really? What else is there beneath that calm? What haven't you said, and why? You become larger than life, not by revealing every detail, but by becoming a silhouette against the light, defined not by what's seen, but by what's hidden. Transparency may win short-term sympathy, but mystery earns long-term influence. So speak when needed, explain when useful, reveal when strategic, but always, always leave something behind the curtain. Because once you master the art of partial presence, you're no longer just a person in the room. You become the room's unsolvable question, and questions hold more power than answers ever will. Rule 8. Don't boast about your achievements. A lie that keeps you small, don't brag. It's arrogant. Stay humble. People will notice your work. You've heard that so many times it's tattooed in your behavior. So, you kept quiet. Let others talk. Hoped someone would speak your name when the credit was passed around. And what happened? They didn't just forget you, they stepped over you. Because here's the ugly truth: silence doesn't look like humility. It looks like irrelevance. You think hiding your accomplishments makes you graceful. In the real world, where status is currency, it makes you invisible. You're not being modest, you're being erased. So let's rewrite the rule. Don't brag constantly, but never hide what makes you powerful. You don't have to inflate, you don't have to shout, but you do have to signal, subtly, confidently, unapologetically. When you enter a room of alphas and no one knows who you are, you don't wait to be discovered. You position yourself quietly like a storm on the horizon. Say, when I launched the campaign last year, back when I closed a multi-region deal, during my time consulting with insert name that shakes the air, and then go quiet. No extra explanation, no justification, just a seed planted in the room, because that's the secret. You're not boasting, you're calibrating the power dynamic, and the room feels it. They lean in, they re-evaluate, they think, wait, who is this? Suddenly, your words weigh more, your silence stretches longer, your presence gains gravity. You break this rule when surrounded by performers, people inflating their status, selling smoke, branding themselves loudly. If you stay quiet then, you're not being noble, you're being outplayed. Because in the hierarchy of perception, the loud are believed until the accomplished speak. But speak with weight, not noise. Speak with facts, not emotion. Speak like someone who's walked through fire and has nothing to prove, but isn't afraid to let the heat rise. Say less, don't mean more. Be the one who drops a quiet truth that silences a room full of performers. Because that silence, that subtle, charged pause after you speak, that's where your authority begins. They won't call it bragging. They'll call it presence. They'll call it credibility. They'll call it confidence. And they'll never forget it. Rule 9. Don't be too serious. The smile that silenced your authority lighten up. Don't be so intense. People like you more when you smile. They say it like advice. But in reality, it's a script. One designed to dull your edges. Because here's the hidden truth. If you're always the one who makes them laugh, you'll never be the one they fear. And no one truly respects what they don't fear, even just a little. You were trained to be likable, to crack jokes, to ease tension, to smile, even when your soul screamed for silence. They said that humor makes you approachable, but they never told you the cost. Approachability often comes at the expense of gravity, because when you constantly make others comfortable, you slowly erase your own weight. Here's the paradox they don't want you to know. In a world that laughs at everything, the one who doesn't laugh becomes a magnet. You don't need to be cold. You don't need to frown. But you must understand the value of controlled seriousness. Because your intensity, that's your signal. Your silence in a moment of levity, that's your leverage. Break this rule when people start treating you like entertainment. When the room leans on you to keep it light. When your presence is being diluted by the expectation of playfulness, that's when you go still. Let the laughter float around you and remain the one who doesn't flinch. Because here's what happens next. They start watching you more closely. They measure their words. They drop the jokes when you speak. You're no longer the distraction. You're the axis the room begins to rotate around. That seriousness, when delivered with calm, with clarity, with presence, creates something rare. Tension is not your enemy, it's your echo. It's what remains in the air after you speak, after you move, after you stare. Now, you don't reject humor completely. You use it when you choose. You laugh when it's strategic, not when it's expected. And in doing so, your laugh becomes electric, not cheap, not automatic. It's a signal, a shift, a choice. Let everyone else chase comfort. Let them make themselves smaller to feel included. You hold your seriousness like a king holds silence, not because you're bitter, but because you understand that gravity never begs to be liked. Rule 10, don't be dominant. The last lie that keeps you leashed: don't take up too much space. Let others speak. Be balanced, not overpowering. This is the final rule they burned into your psyche, the most polished lie of them all, and they dressed it up beautifully. They called it maturity. They called it social intelligence. They called it fairness. But here's what it really is. It's the last chain they put on people who were born to lead. Because balance sounds noble, until you realize that in most rooms, it's just code for, please lower your energy so the mediocre can feel safe. Let's make something clear. Power is not shared. It's seized. And those who ask you to dim your light for balance are often the ones who fear getting exposed by your fire. You were told not to dominate, but you were never told this. If you don't own the space you're in, someone else will, and you'll be orbiting around them, hoping for crumbs. Now, don't misunderstand this rule. True dominance isn't loud. It doesn't interrupt for attention. It doesn't bully, brag, or bark orders. Real dominance is atmospheric. You walk into a room and the temperature changes. You speak, and others adjust their rhythm. You sit in silence, and even then, people feel your weight. That's not ego. That's presence. And presence doesn't apologize for existing. Break this rule when they try to equalize you with people who haven't earned your level. When someone says, let others shine, and you've done the work, carried the weight, shown the results. When they expect you to soften your power for their comfort, don't, not even a little. Because the moment you step back, they'll step forward. And what they can't match in competence, they'll make up for in volume. Speak like you mean it. Occupy space without shrinking. Hold eye contact like the truth belongs to you, because it does. Here's the final paradox: balance is beautiful once you've won. But until then, you dominate or you disappear. You don't need to explain your force. You don't need to ask permission to exist in full size. You are not here to be digestible. You are here to restructure the dynamic. Not because you're better, but because you're ready. Ready to carry more, ready to lead, ready to bear the burden of being seen, respected, followed. And if you refuse to accept that weight, someone less capable will take it from you. So the next time someone says, don't be so intense, don't overshadow others, don't dominate the space, hear what they're really saying: please stay small, so I can pretend we're equals. And in that moment, smile. Because now you see the game. And more importantly, now you're finally ready to play it like it was meant to be played. Now you know. 10 rules they fed you like medicine, but in truth, they were tranquilizers. They told you to be kind, to be quiet, to be humble, to be harmless. And maybe you followed those rules for years, waiting for someone to notice, waiting for permission to rise. But here's the truth you can't unhear. Respect isn't requested, it's taken. And if you don't break these rules when it matters, you'll spend your life watching others rewrite your story. So now the question is simple. Which rule will you break first? Which mask will you take off today? Leave a comment below. Tell me which rule hit you the hardest. Tell me where you've been holding back and where you're done doing it. And if this video shattered something inside you, then let that be the beginning. Subscribe, because what's coming next will make you unrecognizable in the best possible way. This isn't self-help, this is self-reclamation. And in this space, we don't wait for the world to follow, we reprogram it.